Alright, how's it going everyone? Gamma Fighter here, coming at you with another Sylvaneth video, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at Spearhead. That's right, the Sylvaneth side of Spearhead. We are going to look at some of the Spearhead rules, but it's mostly going to be looking at it from a perspective of a Sylvaneth player. So this is not just a general thing about Spearhead. I don't even know most of the other Spearheads and stuff like that, so we're not going into matchups or anything like that. We're just going to talk pretty generally. I'm definitely not an expert at playing Age of Sigmar 4th edition or Spearhead or anything like that. I'm not an expert. I just like Sylvaneth. I like thinking about them and talking about them. I like painting them and collecting them. So I just like putting out videos about them. And some people had asked about Spearhead. So here we go. I want to talk about it. So Spearhead's pretty cool. It's basically like a pre-constructed deck in TCG, like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon. And you buy the Spearhead box. These are the units that you have to choose. And how cool is it that they chose to highlight Sylvaneth here with the picture? They say pick a Spearhead army, and they show a picture of Sylvaneth. So they're telling people, giving a little love to Sylvaneth, telling people to go buy a Sylvaneth Spearhead. But the units are set, which can make it pretty consistent, maybe a little bit easier for a beginner. You don't have to worry about building your army and the rules, the points rules, and that type of thing. How many regiments you're allowed to have, or how many drops you should do, or anything like that. You just pick up what they have here, and you're ready to go. So, you got to build them and paint them and stuff like that too. But that part is chosen for you. There are a few rules that you do get to choose just before the battle starts. So when you see your opponent's army, you know what you're up against. Then you can choose different rules that'll suit you better. But we'll get into that in a little bit when we look at the Sylvaneth specific rules. But first, I do want to go briefly over the rules for Spearhead, just so everyone knows what we're getting into. And importantly, we're going to take a look at the tactics and the command abilities that are available. We're also going to maybe take a quick look at the different twists for the different maps, just because they can affect how we play the game. So with that in mind, let's get going right into Spearhead. So importantly with Spearhead, we do, in the Sylvaneth rules, we do use the terrain. So knowing the layout is going to be helpful, and as you play more, then you'll be more familiar with where you should put things and how you can best use the terrain and that type of a thing. So, but here are the maps. We've got Akshi, which has basically 4 corners in the 4 objectives in the 4 corners, and then 1 in the center. And then the other side is Gairan, where we've got 1 in the middle. And then the other 4 are sort of skewed, italicized, you might say, and even 2 of them are like a third or a quarter of the way off the board. So it's just a little bit different of a layout. It's not a super big board, so the layout, it's pretty subtle, the difference is there. Okay, so what does it say here? Pick your regiment ability. We'll get into that in more detail later. Prepare your war scrolls. I don't know what that... I think they're just saying get ready to use your war scrolls. Okay, and then you fight. Moving on, what we need to skip to is to the battle tactic deck. Here's a picture of the terrain that is the official terrain. You can make proxies, of course, and each of the players gets 1 piece of small terrain and 1 piece of large terrain to deploy, and it doesn't become like their faction terrain or anything like that. It's just that they get to pick where it goes down in the battlefield. So again, because we use terrain, that's going to be important. All right, the daises have different names, and in the rules that we have available right now, the Dracothian dais, the Ignex dais, and the Behemoth dais, these each have a battle tactic where you get bonus points for controlling those objectives. So these 3 are the important ones. There's also a reinforcements ability. Some units will have reinforcements. One of ours, the tree revenants. I don't know why I forgot that name. The tree revenants have reinforcements, and that means that during your movement phase, you can set up if they've been destroyed, you can set up an identical replacement unit within 6 inches of the battlefield edge and not in combat in your territory. So, and it can only do it once. You can't just endlessly cycle the tree revenants. So that's going to be important for us as well. And did I pass up the scoring? I did check this out before I started the video, but sometimes I forget where they put the different things. Another important factor is that the map can be split horizontally, hot dog style, or diagonally, and that will affect the way that you're going to be able to play the game. So I'm not going to get into the details on that. I think that's another subtle type of a thing. I think it can make a big difference, but it's going to matter between the different matchups and that type of thing. So I'm not going to get into it here because that's just way too much detail for this video. Here's the scoring. See, I shouldn't have even said anything. Okay, you get 1 point if you control at least one objective. You get 1 additional point if you control 2 or more objectives, and then you get 1 additional point if you control more objectives than your opponent. So for controlling objectives, you can score up to 3 points. You have to. And the minimum you can do that with is by controlling 2 objectives, and if your opponent controls 1 or fewer objectives. There are 5 objectives total, so factor that into your thoughts behind the scoring. And then each battle tactic that you complete gives you 1 additional victory point, so that is a total of 6 points per round. Plus there are the twists for each of the maps can give you additional victory points as well. So at base we're looking at about 6 points, although you can get additional ones for the different twists that are available. So you win by getting the most victory points. That's of course what we're thinking of how you play the game. Okay, the battle tactic cards. So this is what I was talking about earlier. We're going to get into in just a second, but first the rules behind those. You draw 3 battle tactic cards at the start of the game, and then as you complete a battle tactic, you score the points. You score a point for completing the battle tactic, and then the card is discarded. Or you can use the command ability that is on the tactic card, and then you discard the card, and you're not able to score the battle tactic because of that. So it gives you a kind of a choice between how you're going to use the card. And so maybe if you know you're never going to be able to complete that battle tactic, or you won't be able to complete it this round, and it's got a really valuable command ability, you might just use that command ability to get the value out of it, even though you're sacrificing some points, some max points that you have available to score. You can also discard any cards. So if you just ended up not using it, like you were going to use something defensive and then your opponent just didn't get attack or whatever like that, then you can just discard any that you know you're not going to be using next battle round. You can discard it in between the battle rounds. And you draw up until you have a hand of 3. So on the flip side of that, if you know there's an objective or a battle tactic that you can complete this turn but you couldn't complete it last turn, then you could choose to not discard. You could just hold on to it. And then we determine priority. Does it talk about the... Okay. Does it talk about the priority roll? It talks about the rules after you complete the priority roll, but it doesn't talk about the priority roll here. So in between the battle rounds, so a battle round is one player takes their turn, and then the other player takes their turn, and then that's one battle round. So then if the player... So then you roll off. Whoever rolls higher wins the priority. I have to remember, the rules are a little different for Spearhead, so I have to make sure I'm saying it right. Then whoever wins the priority roll can choose to go first. If you went second in the previous round and you choose to go first, we call that taking a double, because you just had a turn and now you get another turn. It's a double turn. So if you do that though, and you are not losing by 5 or more points, you do not get to draw battle tactic cards. So that limits your ability to score. And this is another example where, hey, maybe you didn't score your battle tactic last time, but you went second, you win the priority, then you want to hold on to that battle tactic because you're not drawing anymore in between the battle rounds. So you don't want to discard them. Okay, so yeah, with all that in mind, let's take a look at the battle tactic cards. So I want to go over these pretty briefly, but they have a battle tactic and a command. So these are not the official ones. I think I probably found this on Reddit, that someone had made these for Spearhead. You can sleeve them up, and you don't have to use the official ones. So these kind of like are meant to look like magic cards or something like that. So here's what I was talking about, where controlling the Ignax Diaz. So that's a pretty easy one to do, depending on, the positioning and things like that. But the command ability is forward to victory. So the interesting thing about the way they do the battle tactics for Spearhead is that it gives you kind of a risk reward. You don't know what cards you're going to draw and in what order, and you have to weigh the feasibility that you're going to be able to complete this battle tactic against the usefulness of this command ability. So if you can deny your opponent 2 victory points by using Forward to Victory, then that's worth more than this 1 victory point that you get from the Ignax Dais. Again, I'm not going to go in super detail on the tactics and the minutia of like the subtlety behind these different abilities and tactics, but I do just want to highlight that at the beginning, that's sort of the interesting fun thing about it, and that's kind of how you get better at Spearhead version of the game is learning when to use things, when to discard, when to try to go for the battle tactic, that type of thing. So a charge reroll is very good. So that's pretty good, but it can be very easy to complete the Ignax Dais. The next one is just summarizing it, and maybe you guys can't see it super well. If you destroy any enemy units, at least one of them, and you destroy more enemy units than friendly units. So that's a sort of a fighting ability, and that can, yeah, like I said, I'm not going to get into the minutia of it. We can, but keep these in mind as we're going over our characters or our units later, and then the abilities that we can choose to do. For the command ability here, we can give strike first to one of our units, but we do that during the enemy hero phase, so you don't do it in your turn. All right, so this one is to cap an objective that your opponent was controlling, but the hard part is that none of the units contesting the objective can have used a fight ability this turn. So that's what makes it hard. One way we can do that, well, I don't want to get into it too much. We do have the Kurnoth Hunters with bows, so you can shoot someone off an objective and then go walk one of your guys onto it, or you can also, what's it called? You can just teleport onto an objective that your opponent is no longer on top of. So, yeah. Okay, and then you can give a unit a 5-up ward, but only for the phase that you do it in. So if you, so it triggers off of being attacked, so that can be a shooting attack or a combat attack, and then you get 5-up ward, but only for that phase. So if it's a shooting attack, the 5-up ward only lasts for the shooting phase. So it's a little bit limited, but a 5-up ward's pretty strong. All right, the Behemoth Dais, just control the Behemoth Dais. The command ability is where the Scroll of Arcane Bolt, so you pick a friendly hero, and they can target an enemy unit within 12 inches of them during the hero phase. And on a 2-up, you do D3 mortal damage to the enemy unit. All right, Dracothian Dais, control that Dais. And then the command ability is where your unit gets strike last for the combat phase, but during the shooting phase, only unmodified shooting rolls of 6 actually hit. So it's super defensive against the shooting, but it gives you strike last. So there's a trade-off there. Okay, this take the flanks is having friendly units within 3 inches of the short battlefield edge. Can be pretty easy to do it, but we only have 4 units total, so it can be kind of hard too. Again, it's just going to depend. And then the command ability is a redeploy for D6 inches, and you can't be in combat, and you can't move into combat for that. So it can be pretty useful. It's on a D6, so it's kind of a gamble. But so yeah, if you redeploy 1 inch, a lot of times it won't help that much. But if your opponent really needs to make that charge, then into that unit, then a redeploy can really mess up their plans. Yeah, even an inch or 2 can actually make it a lot harder, depending on what kind of a charge they have. All right, for this one, you completed the battle tactic. If you have any friendly units that are wholly within enemy territory and they're not in combat, okay, so just being in enemy territory and not being in combat. And then for the command ability, you ignore the rend of let's see. The rend characteristic of attacks that target that unit this phase. So for the whole phase, then you ignore the rend ability after your opponent declares an attack ability. So if something's surrounded and it got multiple enemy units that have rend, then you can use this ability. All right, for this battle tactic, then this is where you control your large terrain feature in your territory. That's all that wording means. Yeah, and then which is usually pretty easy. If things are going well, it should be easy. And then the command ability is that during a combat phase, you heal a friendly hero for D6. Okay. All right, and going on to there's 4 more. Whoops, 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 whoops. Oh my goodness. Please, please. Okay. 4 more. So then this is the where you have one, or at least one friendly unit within 3 inches of your opponent's long battlefield edge. And the command ability is to add the control score to a hero on a d6. You add you add d6 control score to a hero. So that one, usually it's not going to matter, but there's always opportunities. It's a pretty bad command ability. Then next one is where you have to control 2 objectives that your opponent controlled previously at the start of your turn. This one, I think this is one that I would call out as being like pretty difficult. Of course, the positioning and everything like that, it's always going to be affected by that. Your opponent could have 2 objectives that you're right next to, and they don't have any units that they're standing on, and then you just walk onto them, and then you complete that battle tactic. But most of the time, this is going to be a little bit difficult to do. And the command ability is really strong, so a lot of times you might consider using the command ability. But it's not very good. Maybe I'm starting to get into the minutia again. It's not very good in the first turn because you set up a replacement unit for a unit that's been destroyed. But later on in the game, it's quite a bit better. The downside for us, though, is that we only have 1 unit that has 5 or more models, which would be a valid target for this ability. So it's only the Tree Revenants, but we already talked about the Tree Revenants already have the reinforcements ability, so you can already bring back the whole unit using these same rules, except only during your movement phase, not during any, like the command ability is. So you'd really want the unit to be destroyed, and then you'd want to use the reinforcements ability and then have the unit be destroyed again, and then use this command ability to bring them back again. Or vice versa, you'd have them destroyed, use this command ability, and then have that unit be destroyed, the D3 models get destroyed, and then use the reinforcements. I don't know if you can actually do it in that order, but if you can, it's kind of convoluted because we already have the reinforcements on the only unit that's eligible target for this. Okay, and then this battle tactic is killing the enemy general. If the enemy general is already dead, you can kill just any enemy unit. And then the other side, the command ability is to countercharge, which is very strong. That can really mess up your opponent. So, keep that in mind. And then finally, fighting without losing any units. Basically, have none of your units destroyed, but you do have to fight. And then the command ability is it lets you do a retreat, but you take no mortal damage on that retreat. And then, once the retreat has resolved, you can roll 1 dice for each slain model, and then on a 5-up, you return 1 of the slain models to that unit. This one's not super useful for us, mostly because we just have smaller units. Of course, if you did bring back a Kurnoth Hunter on a 5-up, that would be really good. But it's pretty unlikely for that to happen. But maybe you do need to retreat, and yeah, that's what you want to do. So there we go. All right, so that's it for the tactics. I'm not going to get into the twists this time around. I think the video is already taking long enough, and we haven't even started on our rules. So let's get into it. Now, just try to remember, keep in mind the battle tactics that we talked about. Most of them are about controlling something, an objective or a terrain feature. There are a couple that are about just being in a place, on the flanks or at the enemy long edge or just in enemy territory. And then there's just a few actually that are about combat specifically. On controlling an objective, like controlling the Dracothian objective, you may have to fight to be able to do that, but it's not specifically it's not explicitly about combat. There's only 3 actually that are about combat. So kind of an actually, by the way that I kind of rank them. So a lot of it's about control, a little bit about movement, a little bit about combat, and of course, controlling is a combination of movement and combat. So let's get into it. So first off, this is the army. You get a branch witch as your hero unit. You get a tree lord, which doesn't count as a hero in this army, even though it is in the main game. You get 3 Kurnoth hunters with bows, and you get 5 tree revenants. First off, if you're a beginner, the spearhead box is super good for a beginner. The branch witch is the only unit that's not really used in competitive like meta lists, but the Spirit of Durthu is you can build the Tree Lord as a Spirit of Durthu, and it is pretty consistently used in lists. The Kurnoth Hunters are used in pretty much every meta list right now. They're one of our best units for sure. And then the Tree Revenants are also super relevant because they're able to teleport in the main game, and that's super useful for completing battle tactics and capturing objectives in the main game as well. So even though they're not used in every single list, but they are relevant. They're always relevant. As long as they can teleport, they're going to be relevant pretty much. So very good pickup. It also gives you sort of 6 like smaller models. You got 3 medium models in the Kurnoth Hunters, and then 1 really big model in the Tree Lord, and kind of gives you a pretty big range of the different types of units that we have in the army when it comes to just the hobbying aspect, the painting, and the different colors that you're going to be using and that type of thing. So really good pickup. All right, so for our battle traits, so these are like our faction abilities that we have, no matter what. So whenever a unit is wholly within 3 inches of any terrain feature, we can heal 1 at the end of the turn, once per turn. So at the end of each turn, which means during each player's turn, we can heal when we're within 3 inches. Maybe we should have looked at the War Scrolls. So the Tree Lord has a ton of health, and the Kurnoth Hunters have a good amount of health as well. And of course, the Branch Witch is a hero, so they've got a little bit of health. Tree Revenants have 2 health each. So this heal can be pretty useful because all of our units have multiple health. So yeah, you may want to set up your terrain in a way that you can have, especially the Tree Lord, be able to sort of anchor point down maybe near the center objective, so that the Tree Lord can kind of sit there and fight and then continuously heal at the end of every turn. As well as, put it in a place where you may want the Kurnoth Hunters with their bows, where they're going to be able to shoot a lot of the different areas on the field and stand next to a terrain feature in case they take any damage so that they can continue to heal. As well as you may want the Kurnoth Hunters to stay around terrain so they can use the Strike and Fade ability. So at the end of any turn, when a friendly unit has used the fight ability and they're within 3 inches of a terrain feature, then on a 2-up, you can teleport them within 3 inches of any terrain feature and more than 6 inches from all enemy. So actually, you can strike and fade from one terrain feature to that same piece of terrain, as long as you somehow end up 6 inches from the enemy, which is wow. I actually didn't realize it was that good. Like I said, I don't play Spearhead that much, and the rules are different from the main game. So the Strike and Fade is super useful. You don't want the Branch Witch to be tied up in combat. The Kurnoth Hunters for Spearhead, they're actually pretty good in combat. Well, especially because they're a shooting unit mostly, and they're what was I trying to say? I forget what the second point was. Okay, but the Kurnoth Hunters with bows, they're specifically a shooting unit, but they're surprisingly good in combat for Spearhead. Because Spearhead's such a limited format, you don't have access to your opponents don't have access to every unit, so the strength of things is a little bit different than they are in the main game. So the Kurnoth Hunters are actually pretty good in combat, but what you can do is you can actually have them fight, and as long as they're within 3 inches of a terrain feature, they can teleport away so that they can continue to shoot. Or if your opponent charges you on your turn, you can get them out of that combat so that they can shoot during your turn, and then maybe even charge them in, fight, and have them strike and fade again. Now, the only problem is it's on a 2-up. 2-ups are pretty consistent, but if you're betting the game on it, it's gonna every once in a while you're gonna roll a 1 and you're gonna be super disappointed. Okay, now we have regiment abilities. So these are general abilities that you can only pick one of these two. And it's honestly kind of a tough one, and I think it's going to depend on the opponent that you're going to go up against. So at the end of every turn, you can pick an enemy unit contesting an objective, and you roll, and on a 4-up, you deal D3 mortal damage to the enemy unit. So I just said that a 2-up isn't super consistent, but this isn't to like save the life of your Branch Witch or to get your Kurnoth Hunters out of combat. This is just to deal free damage. So it's a 4-up, but also it's every turn, so it's even during your opponent's turn. So it's basically just free damage, and in Spearhead, D3 damage is pretty solid. Like, it's pretty consistent. On average, you would expect the damage to work every battle round, because on average it's a 50-50 shot, and there's 2 battle rounds, or there's 2 turns per battle round, so you'd expect it to go off and deal that D3 damage. And this can actually be a really good way to snipe heroes who usually want to stay back and hide on an objective. Well, they're not safe on the objective from you. So this can be really, really strong. And the problem is our other ability is really strong too. And this is our faction teleport. Once per turn during your movement phase, you can teleport when you're within 3 inches of a terrain feature. You can set up anywhere on the battlefield. You just have to be more than 6 inches from all enemy units. And you can't move after you teleport. That's also really strong. Remember, a lot of this stuff is about controlling things. So being able to teleport onto an undefended objective, or being able to teleport to the enemy's long battlefield edge when they're not in their territory anymore. They charged, and they're fighting in the middle or whatever. Being able to teleport to their large terrain feature so that you can contest it. This can enable a lot of battle tactics. So I honestly think this is a really tough choice, and I think it's going to come down to the opponent that you're up against. If your opponent is really tough and durable, likely to stay back in their territory, then you may want to go ahead and do the D3 mortal damage. And if the opponent's super aggressive and they come at you, then you may want to do the teleportation ability. I don't know if I can give that much more guidance than that. You're going to have to evaluate it based on the kind of units that your opponent has and the playstyle that you think that they're going to have. And maybe they'll tell you their playstyle. They'll be like, hey, I'm the Slaves to Darkness. I've got a chariot, and I got knights, and I got warriors. I'm going to charge you as soon as I can, maybe even on turn 1, and pin you in your territory, and then my warriors are going to march up slowly. Well, then you may want this teleport ability, because they're going to be out of their territory right at the beginning, and then you can teleport something like the Branch Witch or the Tree Revenants back to their territory and try to just dodge their Chaos Warriors and their Chaos Lord, But both of these abilities are super strong, and it just depends on who you're up against. Okay, now these are the enhancements that we can give to the Branch Witch. So this is a pick a friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the general, make it casting roll 2d6. Okay, so this is a spell, and on a 5-up you heal d6. You definitely would be using this to keep the Tree Lord topped off, or maybe the Kurnoth Hunters, heal them up and that type of thing. Healing d6, that can be pretty good. Especially because that Tree Lord is going to be very integral to the game. Now, this is another thing that you choose right before the battle starts. So if your opponent has like great rend and just a ton of damage, and they may be able to just chop right through your Tree Lord, this might not do anything. The Tree Lord might just die. But if there may be a little bit less on the rend and a little bit less on the damage, then this d6 could go a long way to keeping your Tree Lord alive. Okay, Gnarled Warrior is ignoring rend, essentially negative modifiers to save rolls. This is not good. The Branch Witch is a wizard. She is pretty frail, and you do not want her in combat. So if she's in combat, the ignoring rend's probably not going to save her. There's probably a use for every one of these, but I think generally you don't want to pick Gnarled Warrior, unless there's some edge case I'm not thinking about. Like, there could be a specific matchup that I'm just not aware of. So this is another spell, Tree Song, and this is the third edition tree song. Now, in fourth edition, the main game, the tree song, is the ability that summons trees. This one is the one that gives rend. So it's a 7-up casting roll, and then you give +1 rend to a target allied unit's melee weapons. This can be really good as well. Again, this is maybe one where well, now I'm saying two different things, aren't I? I'm saying against a less damaging, more defensive army, a Spearhead, you might want to use the D6 heal, but against a more defensive kind of an army, you might want to use the D6 heal. So I don't know. The Tree Lord's got pretty good rend already, but this really can help it more. So yeah, I think against a super high high armor enemy, the rend can be really good. And then the Seed of Rebirth, if the general be destroyed, then on a 3-up, your general is not destroyed, and then any remaining damage points have no effect, and you heal the general for 1. So you can only use it once per battle. This one, I can see you wanting to use this, but when? That's the question. Because the Branch Witch is pretty frail, but your best bet is going to just be to keep her out of combat. I'm not super familiar with all of them. I feel like because I know the Scaventide box comes with the Jezzails, but I don't know if those are in the Spearhead or if that was just an extra thing. But if there's some really good shooting that can snipe out your hero, this might be a good way to kind of stop them from scoring the kill the general battle tactic and that type of thing. In general, though, I do like the 2 spells a lot more. And if I had to rank them, just theory crafting mostly, because like I said, I haven't played that much, and I don't know if I said that already. I should have said it. I try to be upfront. I haven't played Spearhead that much. I don't know every matchup and everything like that. I don't have all the other faction Spearheads memorized or anything like that. But the healing D6 or the +1 to rend are generally going to be pretty strong. If they're not super useful, then maybe the Seed of Rebirth to keep your general alive. So here we go. Here's the Branch Witch I was telling you about. She's got 5 health on a 5-up Sade with no ward. So that's what I mean when I say she's pretty frail. She's only got 2 control. She's got a 6-inch move, so she's pretty slow, but the board is pretty small as well. But generally, you're going to want to keep her in the back as a support piece. She doesn't even have her shooting in the Spearhead version of the game, so she has no shooting. She's mostly just hiding. She's definitely a support piece. So she also has her own War Scroll spell, and this might be one reason that you might not want to choose the healing spell, is that you might just focus on the Kurnoth Hunters or the Tree Revenants instead. So she's got a 2d6 spell cast, and on a 7 you can return 1 slain model. Very strong on the Kurnoth Hunters, and then if it triggers on the Tree Revenants, you return D3 models instead of 1. This doesn't work on the Tree Lord, because if the Tree Lord is missing a model, then the whole unit is gone, so you can't target it anymore. So this only works on the Kurnoth Hunters or the Tree Revenants. So that's a pretty good support piece. It's kind of dangerous because she does have to be, well, I guess she only has to be within 18 inches, and the board's pretty small, so maybe it's not that dangerous. And if the Tree Revenants are in enemy territory and they're out of the range, they can get destroyed and then come back with the reinforcements ability, and then maybe you can decide to be a little safer with them and then revive those models as needed with the Branch Witch. That is a way to consider playing, where you can be a little more aggressive with the Tree Revenants because you know you have the reinforcements ability, because you know that you can possibly succeed on this casting roll and bring D3 of them back. So even if you lose 3 of them, there's a chance you could bring all of them back. So that's pretty strong. Same thing with the Kurnoth Hunters. They're pretty strong, like I said. You definitely don't want to lose them completely, but if you do lose like one of them, it's not the end of the world, because on a 7 casting roll of a 7-up, you can bring one of them back, so that's pretty good. All right, getting into the Tree Lord. Tree Lord's really the star of the show. Here, it is a very tanky boy with 14 health on a 3-up save, just a 5-inch move, and with 5 control. It's got a little bit of a shooting attack, just 10-inch range, but again, the board's pretty small. 3s and 2s, rend 1, damage 2 with shoot in combat. Really nice because you do want it in combat, earning points and just being the focal point of the match. He's got 2 melee attacks or combat attacks, 5 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, rend 1, damage 2. Like I said, they've got pretty good rend on here. And then but I guess, looking at it, if you get up against an army that has 3-up armor on everything, then the 1 rend isn't going to be super impressive. You'll want that tree song to give 2 rend. That would be really good. And then massive impaling talons. This is the battle damage 1. If you've taken 10 or more damage, you only get 1 of these attacks. Normally you have 2. This is also on 4s and 2s, but it's rend 2, damage 3. So really powerful attack, but there's only 2 of them. So it's not super high volume. The Tree Lord is very swingy, and in the full game of Age of Sigmar, the Tree Lord is not a very powerful damaging piece, but in the Spearhead, it's really good, actually. It's just inconsistent because you're doing 7 attacks, both of which hit on 4s, so that's pretty inconsistent. And then, wounding on 2s is really good, but there's still a chance that you could drop 1 or more of those as well. So it's pretty swingy, but really good as a just defensive profile and offensive profile as well. So that's why I think of the Tree Lord as the main character here, and then that's why I kind of lean towards that heal D6 spell for the Branch Witch, because it is you want to keep the Tree Lord topped off, and once the Tree Lord piece falls, then your whole strategy kind of crumbles apart. The Tree Lord has a monstrous rampage here. On a 4-up, the enemy gets a strike last. That's really good because it works during your opponent's turn. It's not super reliable. It is a 4-up, but the strike last ability is really strong, especially because in Spearhead there's not a ton of units, so they might only have 1 unit that's charged into your Tree Lord, and then you can give them strike last, wipe out half of the unit first, and before they even get a chance to strike back. It can be really powerful. I really do like the Tree Lord in the Spearhead. All right, then we've got the Kurnoth Hunters, 5 health each, which is a lot. The whole unit has a total of 15 health, which is more than the Tree Lord. And you can revive models with this. That's why I was saying that the Branch Witch spell to bring back a model is very, very strong. They've only got a 5-inch move as well, and they've got a 4-up save. So a little bit worse save than the Tree Lord, but still a pretty solid defensive profile from them. And they're a shooting unit. They have 2 attacks each at 18-inch range, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. That's really pretty good. This can do some serious damage. It can be a little bit swingy as well because it's a total of 6 attacks and you're hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. It's not super consistent. You're not doing a ton of volume, but the rend 1, damage 2 is that these are good quality attacks when they do hit and wound. So that's really nice. Then they also get 3 attacks each in combat, and this is what I was saying. They're surprisingly good in combat, especially for Spearhead. Hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, no rend, and 1 damage. Obviously against a really heavily armored enemy, it's not going to do that much, but it is a surprising amount of volume. It's 9 attacks total, and 1 damage each. It's surprisingly good for a shooting unit. They're also super durable. It's a very well-rounded unit. And on top of that, on top of their regular durability, when they're contesting an objective, they and friendly units have a 6-up ward, which is really nice. It's not going to change the world necessarily, but on 15 wounds, 4-up save with a 6-up ward is pretty solid defensive profile, especially because you can bring models back. You can do a D6 heal spell with the Branch Witch. Very solid. And then finally, this is that reinforcement symbol I was talking about. We've got the Tree Revenants with 2 health on a 5-up save, 6-inch movement and 1 control each, and 5 models in the... Oh, I should have said, the Kurnoth Hunters are 3 models and the Tree Revenants are 5 models. All right. In the full game of Age of Sigmar, I mentioned that Tree Revenants have a teleport. They do not have this here, or they don't have the teleport in Spearhead, but you can choose the ability at the beginning of the battle to give the teleport to the whole army. So you would probably use it on the Tree Revenants, maybe the Branch Witch, that type of a thing. So the Tree Revenants have 2 attacks each, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, rend 1, damage 1. Not terrible. I mean, in the full version of the game, it's pretty bad. This is still highlighted now. I don't know how to get it off. In the full version of the game, this is pretty bad, but Spearhead is a very limited format, so you're only going up against certain things. Your opponent's not bringing whatever they want to bring. They have to bring the Spearhead box for their faction. So this is actually pretty good. You'd consider Tree Revenants to be chaff, and this is really not terrible for chaff. These guys are, you can have them teleporting around the board or running around the board, completing battle tactics for you, while the Kurnoth Hunters and the Tree Lord are, fighting stuff. And then on top of that, they get the ability from 3rd edition, once again, where you can add 1 to hit rolls for attacks. So it would be 2 to hit and 4 to wound, so the reverse of the Tree Lord. So yeah, you can give +1 to hit, or you can get +1 to save. And of course, this is just going to depend on what's going on in that fight, in that combat phase. If it's your opponent's turn, a lot of times you're going to want +1 to save, because you might save one of your models. They might survive because of it, and then you'll be able to swing back with more damage because more survived. And of course, if you're being aggressive with these guys, then you may want to add +1 to attacks to get more damage in. Again, though, sometimes you're going to be going up against something where they're not going to be doing very much damage no matter what, so you might just add the save roll, +1 to save on top of that for them, instead of considering the +1 to hit. All right, so that's it for our Spearhead. So going back to the different battle tactics and things like that, well, I'm not going to get into it. Some of these things we are pretty good at, especially like if you pick the teleport, being able to teleport the Tree Revenants to the different objectives to take them and get those extra battle tactics as well, being able to teleport to different parts of, the edges of the board, or the being in enemy territory, or capturing their large terrain feature, or something like that. That teleport is going to be super useful. It is a really strong one, but there's going to be some enemy spearheads that are just super fighty, super combative, and you're going to need just the extra damage to be able to do it, to be able to succeed. Maybe they want to sit on their side of the board and defend and protect against you completing those objectives. Then that D3 damage might be better as the different options and that type of a thing. And yeah, when it comes to the fighting and combat abilities, or battle tactics rather, the Tree Lord is going to be really good at those, and the Kurnoth Hunters as well. I referred to them earlier as like combat battle tactics, but really I don't think none of them specified that it has to be combat damage, which would be like melee weapons. So being slaying the enemy general, you can slay them with shooting, for example. Now you would want to have the ability to charge into them as a backup, because shooting is not always super accurate and stuff. But but you can try to weaken them with your shooting, and then maybe you kill them and you just score the battle tactic already. So that's really good. But the Tree Lord and the Kurnoth Hunters are definitely going to be your main pieces, defensively and offensively. The Branch, which is going to be a support piece that if you choose the teleport, you may use her to teleport around to complete some of these battle tactics. And then the Tree Revenants, they're going to be sort of chaff. They're pretty expendable with the reinforcements ability, on the command ability as well. So you can kind of throw them away and be a little bit reckless with them, at least with the first instance of them. And you're going to be using them to move around and teleport if you chose that ability, and be able to complete battle tactics for you. So that's it. That's my take on the Spearhead. Let me know if you had any specific questions down below. I was just trying to cover the general basics of it, like I said, because I don't have a ton of experience with it. This is a lot of theory crafting and looking at the rules and seeing how they interact with each other and with the Sylvaneth specific rules. So with that, that's it from me. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts below. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one.